Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life with Sterling Fox on AM 650.
Welcome back to the program. On this episode of Boomer Life, we're talking about solutions to debt problems with George Abakhan, the president of Abakhan and Associates. And if you're curious about how to spell Abakhan, it's Abakhan. The website is moneytroubles.ca, or for that matter, you can go to abakhan.com. It all leads to the same place. Experienced professionals with years of having dealt with thousands of individuals and hundreds of companies, multiple banks and financial institutions offering solutions, and most importantly, George, to those consumers, hope. A lot of people show up at your office talking to you and your associates who are almost devoid of hope. They're so stressed out and so maxed out. They've run the limit, and they come to you and they sit down and sort of slump into a chair and tell you, "I think I have to go bankrupt." And people say you guys are pretty good at that.
Well, they say that many people come to us and the only option they've heard of is going bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or they've heard that we can help them. And that's what we actually advertise. We're good people to know.
Right.
To get a fresh start. You don't actually have to go bankrupt. And that's what I tell people when they come in. And I say, well, before you decide that you're going to go bankrupt, let's just see what we've got. I mean, do you have to go bankrupt? And for that, I need a certain amount of information. I say, okay. What's your take-home pay, for instance?
Right.
Well, actually, I start off with, how much debt do you have?
Right.
That's the first thing. And
the big ugly number. Get it out on the table and start from there, right?
Okay, so you owe $60,000 or $30,000 or $40,000.
And $39,000 is the typical British Columbia average, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's actually $10,000 in Quebec, but that's because nobody gives them any credit cards, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
But so if it's, I mean, our gamut runs, as I say, from 20,000 through 80,000, but we'll do people below 20,000. I mean, it's amazing how stressful $200 a month can be on an income of $1,200.
I was just going to say, if you don't have
retired person,
if you don't have the money to pay, it doesn't matter how much you owe. If you can't afford to pay the payments, then life is suddenly pretty stressful.
Yeah, and some people have already run the gamut by using 2 or 3 credit cards. They get one at Walmart, they get one in the mail, or they get offered one at a bank, and before you know what's happened, they got 2 or 3 credit cards, and they each got anywhere between a $5,000 and $20,000 credit limit.
Right.
They start using the cards to pay off each other, and then really, then they get maxed out, and that's when they tend to come to us.
Are you ever in the fortunate position of having to offer financial advice to clients or people who come to see you, George, who aren't in quite the desperate end of the tether states, but recognize we're starting to lose it here, and if we don't get ourselves organized now, we'll be back in 6 months to a year, literally requesting a bankruptcy?
Oh, I've had many debtors, corporate debtors especially, that turn up they're at the end of the tether, they're maxed out on the bank lines, they're maxed out with their creditors, and they turn up. I say, well, look, I know hindsight's an exact science, but it would have been great if you'd come back to us 6 months ago.
Right.
Because now you're looking pretty well at a bankruptcy unless we can figure something out on a proposal basis or a debt settlement. A debt settlement, by the way, is very much the imagination of the people putting it together. You can organize skip payments through a debt settlement. So if you have income, if you're a seasonal worker, you get income in the summer or in the winter, and you can't make payments in either in
the off seasons, right?
In the off seasons, we can design a proposal that fits that. It all depends on the bottom line as to what the creditors are going to get versus a bankruptcy.
But it's definitely not one size fits all, is it?
No, it isn't. Everybody has their own problem. Everybody has their own situation. Like, if we can't make the payments, get the percentage payments within, say, 5 years, we may have to move it up to 7 or 8 years. Revenue Canada can always be difficult, But Revenue Canada, if the debt is less than 50% of the outstanding debt, has to go with the rest of the creditors.
Interesting. Okay, they can't run the show all the time.
No, and if it goes, I mean, sometimes I've had creditor situations where Revenue Canada has actually agreed to 10 cents on the dollar. Sometimes they've actually represented 50% of the creditors, and they vote. No, sorry, they file a proof of claim, which is their indebtedness, but they don't file a vote. Fine.
So the creditors ultimately, when someone's financial predicaments are organized by a trustee like yourself or your Abakhan associates, then the creditors actually, as a group, vote on whether this is acceptable to them or not.
Exactly.
Interesting. Do they usually accept?
I'd say 90% of ours are accepted.
Okay. Again, something
even
is
higher
better than
that.
nothing, right?
Yeah, even higher than that. Generally, in the cases of the more difficult and more complex ones, sometimes instead of having the creditor meeting at a set date, we may have to adjourn it for 1 or 2 times to get more information in, so that the creditors at the meeting can feel comfortable that this proposal has a reasonable chance of success.
Right.
As I say, it all is a question of designing it for the circumstances, and that's what we do. And our colleagues in the office, our colleagues in the various offices, tend to do the work from start to finish. You asked me at one point a comparison between debt counselors and other trustees.
Correct, yeah.
Some trustees have a very segmented approach. So, their employees will do certain things, and that's all they do.
Okay.
Our situation, we've had people come in from those offices, and they find it a little difficult initially to learn to do the whole thing. But if you learn to do the whole process, then you understand more with the debtors, and you get to relate closer to the debtors, and it's a very much personal business, and that's what I try to, and we as what we call the A team, try to impose on the staff.
A kind of a touchy question for you here, and Dwayne says we got to take a break, but just before we do, right in line with the thinking that you've been offering here, when one is in serious financial trouble and is requesting or is in need of the assistance of a financial professional like yourself, whether it's a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, this is some kind of public admission of failure. This is embarrassing. This is something that people have difficulty coming to terms with looking at themselves in a mirror, let alone what the rest of the world must think of them and their inability to manage a credit card, for crying out loud. So when they go to an office like Abakhan and Associates, there's a concern about being judged for not having got it right, for blowing it, for being an idiot, for, the people get insecure about this stuff. And when you get into deep financial trouble, George, you get emotional, you get real messed up, and on top of all of that, it's embarrassing. How do you handle all that?
Well, we handle it carefully. A person comes into the office, we take him to an area, a boardroom or a meeting room that is devoid of pretty well anything in there. So we offer them coffee, we offer them tea, whatever they want, and we get them to relax and tell us their story.
Right, right.
And
in some cases, it must be just a huge relief just to be able to tell the darn story. It's been bottled up inside you so long.
Well, yeah, some of them will take 10, 20 minutes to get to the nuts of the problem.
Sure, sure.
On the telephone, it's probably a little quicker, a little faster. But that's, we try to make them comfortable, and we do get rejects from other places where I didn't like the guy's attitude, I didn't like this, I didn't like that.
Right.
We are not subjective. I mean, we are not judgmental.
Right. Okay.
This can happen to anybody. You can be out of work for a short period. You have sickness. You have family sickness, or you may have a gambling problem, which, or an alcoholic problem of one sort or another. That happens as well.
Right. So being non-judgmental professionals is a key to being successful in the trustee business.
I believe so.
Interesting stuff. Our guest is the president of Abakhan and Associates, trustees in bankruptcy and debt administrators in Vancouver. Let me go through the list here. In Vancouver, in Surrey, in Victoria, Vernon, and Prince George, and operating through many other centers province-wide and online at moneytroubles.ca. And we're back with more with George Abakhan after this quick timeout.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on AM 650.